Okay, so now I'll continue the CSS assignment, the first part anyway, the first page. I already have my designer recipe open. I haven't covered anything except that we're going to be working in the first page with the body element, the header on top that has an H1 inside, and then we're going to look at the section to put in an ID, and we're going to be dealing with the navigation element. That's going to be the buttons on the side. As I said before, these look like that. You see the buttons on the side, you see the separation between the columns and everything else, the colors, etc. I already started my HTML in CodePen. I will now begin to add some CSS. Before I do that though, I do want to start up some files that I may be needing in less than a couple of minutes, since what's happening in CodePen is just for our immediate benefit, that we can see what's happening with the code as we add it. But when we actually publish, it's going to be all on our GitHub account. So I need to open up Atom to get some real editing going. And once that opens, basically I'm just going to copy the CodePen code from the page to the new page. And let me make a little bit better sense of that. Atom is for us to work locally in our computer. We can save everything in our own hard drive, and then we can push it rather, to our GitHub repository. I see the same files that I see in GitHub. I'm working with week 3, and there is a blank index file. So I just selected so that I can bring in the code that I'm working on here. This is the same one that I copied straight from the assignment. I selected it all, press Control A to select all, and then Control C to copy, Command A, Command C in a Mac, and then just paste into the actual page in Atom. We can't see right away what's going with Atom until we actually publish it, so it would be helpful at this moment to think about maybe pushing it. Before I do that, I want to have all the files that I'm going to need in a ready state, as it were. I'll give myself a little bit more space to look at the code. You'll notice that in line 6 there is a link with a reference to a file called styles.css. This is the file that does not yet exist. This is the file that we're building. So before we do anything, we need to create it. I'll right click on my week 3 folder, and I don't know if you can see it, but there is a shortcut here. That's the letter A that you can press, but I will click on new file to create the new file. It tells me I'm already on week 3, and I can see that the file name that I need is styles.css. No spaces. Styles.css. Press enter to accept it, and now it's connected. Now index will depend on styles to actually give us the colors, give us the design of the page, as it looks like in the sample, this one right here. There is a note in the assignment that for this assignment, when you create the styles.css in your week 3, you need some code to get started. This is optional really, but it's standard things that we need to add to our CSS. Basically, it's just defining the character set as being Western alphabet. And then there's just a little remark here that says this is a CSS document. So it's all fully optional, but at least it gets us started with something in the file. I copied, and I'm going to paste with Control V, and there's the code. Doesn't do much. Press enter a couple of times just to give myself a little bit of space. Now I'll go back to the recipe and really get cooking. We have the body element that's already represented in the HTML, and we're going to tell it that we need to set the font family to Georgia. What does the Georgia font look like? It's made by Microsoft. It's been around for a long time, Georgia font. And you can see all kinds of information about it. I don't know that Google necessarily has it, because this is a Microsoft product. It's free. It's been free for a long time, and You can read the story all about it, but just know that it's sort of easy on the eye. You can read books, basically, a little bit easier, I think is what Microsoft determined, and etc., etc. You may be more familiar with Times New Roman in Word, or even just all the documents, or most of the documents that you see online. But currently, that's probably what we would see if we were pushing our file up there. So let me do that while I'm still here. I will stage the styles.css and I will stage the index. I should stage them all. And if you're grayed out like I am, it means that you need to save it. So file save, Control S would have worked, and stage all. We'll add a message that says that initial code is pushed. Commit to the master branch and push it. I'll wait a little bit for this to actually get there. If you're impatient or if it's taking too long, you can always, I'm going to right click and tell it to show in the Explorer. You would show in the Finder if you're on a Mac. A window popped up that will show me where my files are. Right here, they're inside of the week 3 folder. And I can then drag my file, the HTML file, into a browser, or actually I could have just double clicked it to open it, and there it is. So here's the CSS Designer locally. It doesn't have any CSS code, so I'm still missing the styling. If I were to right click though, I could view the page source and the styles.css is attached. If I clicked on it, I would see nothing because we added insignificant code to it, but at least the file exists. I will close these two, and hopefully my page, the one that I already have loaded here, if I reload, there it is. There's my CSS Designer, and we're going to be doing lots of changes. This is Times New Roman. You'll also notice the spaces in between the text and the edge, as I mentioned in the previous video. We're not going to deal with that here, but we are going to center a lot of stuff. We're going to add a lot of graphics, and we're going to be adding color. So going back to the recipe, I said that the first thing we need to do is set the font family to Georgia and comma serif. Why 2 fonts? I thought we only wanted one. Well, one is Georgia. The second one could be Times, because that is a sort of a standard font that's been around for a long time. So it's going to say, well, before you load anything, make sure that you change it to Georgia if the user doesn't have Georgia, because maybe they're in a Linux device and they haven't loaded Georgia yet. Then load serif. Serif is a standard name for fonts that have feet at the edge. They look like Times, they look like Georgia. This is a sans serif, for example, at the top. You'll see that the CSS, they look like they're just straight lines all around. There's no fancy feet at the end. Serif means feet. If you find that you're unaware of what's going on with this, what's the font family, anything that is highlighted here, it's a link. You can click on it, get more information from W3 Schools as you go along. And I told you before that copying and pasting is totally permissible. It's telling me that definition and usage, well, there's lots of information. Please read that. It's also in the text. It tells you how to use it. We're going to be using the font family because we're going to need the Georgia font family. But I'll just copy this so that I don't have to type it. I'll copy that, come back into my Atom, and in styles.css, before I just paste anything, I know that I'm working with the body. So I will call it to order here, body, and all of our tags, all of our CSS specifications are going to go in between curly braces. That's, at least on my keyboard, it's right next to the letter P. And I press enter because I want to put in a list what's happening. Yes, I could put it all inside of the brackets, but then that gets confusing. So I'll paste, press Ctrl V. Here's the font family that it's calling for Times New Roman, which would be okay, except we're looking for Georgia. I'm going to select that text and say call Georgia, and right now it says if you can't find Georgia, get times. Well, the recipe says to just call for either Georgia or Serif, so I'll delete times. And at the end there's a semicolon. That's the end of the line. And every piece of code that we write at the end of the line, there will be a semicolon. I'll press enter to have more space to keep on coding. My next part of the recipe is to change the text color. And you can read about text color in the link as well. Basically, it's very simple. Inside the body or inside of any element, you can say, hey, this element needs to have this color. And color refers to the text. So I can copy that or I can type it, up to you, and add color. I know that the recipe said that we should keep the letters black, and we could just type out the word black. I'll save that really quick, Control S. And if I go back to the page where I loaded this, since this is a local page, it's in my Drive C, I can reload it, press F5 or Control R to reload, and you can already see a change in the font. This is Georgia rather than Times New Roman. Next thing in the recipe is we're going to add the line height. If you're familiar with Microsoft Word and you know that you have a single space and you want to get a longer paper, more pages, you can change the spacing in between. The line height is basically something that all printers refer to as the kerning. That's just the space in between the lines. So rather than having 100%, which would be a regular line height, we're going to add an additional 40% at 140%. It could be EM 1.4. I'll speak more about rather EM later in the course, your M numbers. So line height, more information about that here, basically tells you what's going on. Be sure that if you're consulting W3 schools that you click on try it yourself every time so that you see what's going on. Follow their advice. You can change the line height here, for example, from 1.6 to 3.6. Run it and see what happens. Well, right away we see there's more spacing, and that's what we're looking for in our page. So the page then, we said it's going to be line height at 140%. After the color black, I will add line height. I will let Adam help me as much as it can. I'll click on it to accept it, and we said 140%. 140%, go to the next line. By the way, before I forget, I said that you could change the color to black. Well, you can change it to red. For this assignment, obviously you want black, but you can change it to any named color. There's also additional named web safe colors that we'll talk about later. The recipe though tells you that you can change it to black, or you could change it to a series of numbers. It says that you can change it to black hashtag 000000, and that is a hexadecimal value. So if I say if I look for hashtag 000000, it tells me that's a hexadecimal value and it's black. You can see that it's black. In other words, it's absence of color. In RGBA, it's going to be 000, absence of color, and then 1. HSL, I'm not familiar with that. CMAC is for printers, it's 100% black, because C is cyan, M is magenta, Y is yellow, and black, K is black. So these numbers, what they mean, 000000, if I made too many zeros, I apologize, but basically it's the colors of red, green, and blue. 0 red, 0 green, 0 blue will give you black. So I'll change it to that. Hashtag, if you're doing a hexadecimal, 000000. The shortcut for this is also 3 zeros, but that's a different subject. Following the recipe, we're going to set the margin. So the margins, what I told you all around the box, it's going to be 30 pixels all around. Be careful, because at some point we're going to be saying, well, it's going to be space on top, there's going to be space to the right, to the bottom, etc. Right now, margin's going to be 30 pixels all around in the body. So let's add that. Margin is 30 pixels. Pixel being one dot in the screen. I'll save this real quick. Although before I get too happy with myself, I noticed something. See how margin is kind of grayed out? It's because something's wrong in the line before that. I forgot to put in a semicolon. I did now. Margin sort of recovered its color. I'll press Ctrl S to save again. Check my CSS Designer page, reload, and notice how things moved around a bit because 30 additional pixels were added to the edge around the margin. If I were to right click and inspect this page, then I see that the body here, now that margin of 8 pixels is ignored, but the number 30 is in the orange box right below that. So our changes are taking place. Going back to the recipe, the next thing is we're going to add a background image that's going to be page bg.gif. For that, let's start to think about downloading some of these files. I know that I want the page background, page bg. I'll download them individually. I'll right click and tell it to save the link as, and I'll save this inside of my week 3 folder, which very conveniently was already open. If it's not in here right away, be it on a PC or a Mac, make sure that you find your way to the week 3 folder. That's where you want to put your images in. I'll click on save, and it's down. And I need to get this to the repository so that it actually can do something with it. I'll go to my other page where I have opened the repository, and here's my index file, and let me reload this because I've already also uploaded my styles.css when I last pushed. I'm going to, rather than, well, I guess I could push it from Atom if I so wanted to, or I could upload it here. Let me push it from Atom first, and then I'll come back and show you how to put it directly into GitHub. You'll notice that inside of my week 3 there seems to be no change, but if I reload this, there's page bg.gif. Here's the background. This is what it looks like. So it's now there. My index, I've changed some things, so well, not much. You shouldn't be changing much on the HTML, but I'll press Ctrl S nonetheless. I don't need to save the file for the image, but I will save the CSS one more time. For unstaged changes, then I have the styles which was changed plus the GIF which was added. I'm going to stage all of these files. I'm going to say update with one image, commit this to the branch, and push it. This might take just a couple of seconds longer since it's moving an image, but I expect to see this somewhere up here pretty quickly. Here's page bg.gif, which was 14 seconds ago. If I were to click on the name of the file, it would show me what the file looks like. Not much I can do with it except use it in design and look at it, and that's fine. So if I go back to my recipe, we know that we want to add the background image to be page bg.gif. I'll click on background image so that I can get W3 Schools to tell me more about it. And here's the basic usage. So the command background image, or at least the CSS background image, then we'll add the word URL, parentheses, and then the location of the image inside of quotes. In this case, is expecting a file in the same folder that's called paper.gif. Ours is called something else. Closing the quotes and the parentheses, finished with a semicolon. You could also just add a color to your background, and that will create a box. I'm going to copy that text and dump it into my CSS. So right after margin, I'll press Ctrl V what I just copied. And I know by looking at the directory here that the file is called page hyphen, or rather dash bg. So I will say page dash bg for background, and then it's a GIF as well. I'll save this. and see what it looks like in my local page. And by local, I mean my local page. This is the published page. I want to look at this one. This is the one that's in my drive. I'll reload, and I see that my image, or rather the background, has been replaced with an image as opposed to it being blank. I can see a little bit more about the information next to the code, since I'm looking at the structure there. But now we have this one image. I'm almost done with the first part. The background image should not repeat, and it should stay fixed. So what does that mean? Let's find out. It's just basically whether it repeats in this image. Let me see what it's actually doing right now. It's repeating. We can't really tell, but it's repeating. If I zoom out, see what's going on. It's repeating all over the place. It says I'm going to lay it in once, and then I'm going to put another copy next to it, another one, and so on and so forth, all the way to infinity to the right, and all the way to the infinity down below, all the way to Philadelphia, maybe, I don't know. And so now we need to say, well, when it's repeating, we can say repeat to y, to the y-axis, so vertically, or you can say repeat x, repeat horizontally. You can also say no, don't do something, and more specifically, it's no repeat. So our background repeat will be no repeat. Background repeat, no repeat. Simple as that. In our code, we can say background dash repeat colon no repeat. That was the first thing that popped up. Next, I close this, go to the next window, and we can now move on to the next thing in the recipe, this one right here. And it says that it should stay fixed. What does that mean? Well, just like we said, well, one of the qualities of this image is that it should not repeat. The background attachment will be fixed. There are other options. I'm going to stick to just the repeat so that I can move on faster on this presentation. I'll paste what I just copied, say that the background attachment is fixed, and I know there's going to be one last thing that we need to add for the first part. The background color will be this hexadecimal color. What color is that, I wonder? I want to say it's is it the yellow one or is it the red one? Here's the yellow one right there. So that's what that looks like, and we're just going to basically do the same thing that the recipe says. Background dash color is going to be this one. I already copied the color value, and I don't need to copy the code. I just know that it's background color, and that's the second option here. And I will paste the hexadecimal number that I just copied, making sure that I add the hashtag so that it knows what I'm talking about. File and save, and then I can stage the CSS change and tell it to say part 1 of the recipe is almost complete, because I still need other things to do the first page, and push it. In the meantime, I will see what it looks like locally by reloading, and I'm still in the system one, so let me go back local right here. This one's on my file. Reload, and we have the background image, and it's also fixed. And even better, if I zoom out, notice how the rest of the color is also matching the image. Otherwise this would be all white. If I go and do an inspection on the background color and I were to change this to white, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is what we avoided. So we want to add that other color so that it looks a little bit better. So in the recipe, we've reached the end of the body element, and the next video I will complete page 1. So we'll do the header, we'll do the ID container, the navigation, we'll have our buttons, and then when you can get familiar with this process and move on to finish the rest of the recipe.